All right, everybody, it's Chris with Drop Dice. So we're back this week. It's Wednesday. We're back to world building again. I'm going to try and keep this one short. Unfortunately, I think this topic will go a little longer, but again, I'm shooting for short videos. My goal is to kind of keep these things short, sweet, to the point, and give you guys what you need to know. So first off, what I wanted to talk about is kind of going back to our world map. We laid out those cities and we kind of got an idea of why they exist and everything, but I wanted to find why certain cities exist a little bit more. So I whipped up a a town, which I'm not sure where exactly I'm going to place. I just thought about what I'd like to see and explore. Now, sometimes I take inspiration from the map. Sometimes I just kind of whip together a town and just see what I've got. Um, and this was my first time really experimenting with the 5th edition way to build a city. And it was actually really good. It gave me a lot of the stuff that I was looking for, but it allowed me enough flexibility to kind of go with it. So let me show you guys what I've got here. So I'm going to share screen, and we'll go ahead and talk about that real quick here. So let's see. Here is my settlement, Ironthal. And in Ironthal, we've got a couple things going on here. So 5th edition makes you decide what the purpose is for your city. And so my purpose is this is going to be the home base where I start my adventure, or at least hypothetically, that's what it is right now. There is a little bit of stuff that, let's do this actually. There is a little bit of stuff that we can explore as the game goes along, and actually find out a little bit more about just in general. But so for now, it's just going to be our home base. If the players decide to make somewhere else their home base, its purpose will change. Basically, I'm really liberal GM. I like my players to make decisions and feel like their decisions mean things, so I'm not going to force them to stay in one place. I decided to make it to town. I decided to just kind of give it a random number of population. Now, the book doesn't tell you to really go too far into this. I like details, and so I started playing with it, and I said that, you know, it's majority of humans with dwarves, excuse me, as a secondary, and there's a small dragonborn house in the city. Originally, I didn't even have that sentence about the dragonborn city in the city, but I started playing with it, and I really liked it. Now, if you guys like the format that I use here, it's pretty easy to emulate using OneNote. But basically, I broke it down into atmosphere, the type of government, and things like that. And the location I put here is part of the Confederacy of Brave States. Now, I was really glad to see 5th edition acknowledge Confederacy as a form of government that's usable inside games officially anyways. Not to say that people haven't been doing it before, but a Confederacy is a confederation or joining multiple nations for the greater good. Like that's what the Confederate States in the United States were about. It was the multiple state governments joining together to create an overall government that loosely unified them. So the Confederacy of Brave States kind of loosely unifies all the states inside, or all the different countries inside this area. This country's government, or settlement's government rather, happens to be a monarchy, which I wanted to have because that is kind of a direct dichotomy to what a confederacy usually stands for, and I wanted to have that. So the town council has a strict code here, and this is part of the confederacy rules. They have one representative per 1,000 people inside the city. So they have 3 representatives, and we'll kind of come back to those representatives in a little while here. They're referred to as counselors. So you can actually see them right over here. I've got 3 counselors. Now, it also, like I mentioned, does fall underneath that Confederacy of Brave States. They ultimately have the overarching leadership, if you will, but it's very loose. It's not like the United States, where the president and the continental federal government makes all the rules. It's more like each country makes their own rules, and then they have a qualifying unity underneath a theme or a prevailing thought process. And then I like to be a little particular with things like this. So my town guards are 42. I have 15 elite guards. I have 6 knights within the city. The knight thing, again, wasn't there when I first started, but I added them later because I really liked it. So commerce in the 5th edition book, it tells you to just kind of come up with things. Again, I like hard numbers because if my players go through and let's say they burn down the inn, well, there's only 2 inns in this town. If they burn down one, they're probably not going to get accepted into the other one that's left. And, you know, it makes for a problem. Or let's say I have kobolds come in and they attack the city and they destroy a cobbler and a tanner. My numbers are going to change, which will reflect my economy inside the city a little bit different. I like to have a little bit of flowing economy inside the game. It's not always super important, but I will change economic numbers if like there's been a big problem, like let's say, you know, kobolds come in and they burn down, like I mentioned, the tanner, the cobbler, like 2 carpenters, one of the taverns, and the magic shop is gone. That's a huge hit to the city. So maybe then I'm going to change prices and raise the price on products by 10% or something like that. But the other thing that this does for me is, let's say, you know, I'm looking through here and I've got things that range from inns to produce vendors to masons and whatnot, but I'm looking here and sure, there's a blacksmith and there's some weaponsmiths here. What about a bowyer? So I've got 1 bowyer, and let's say that happens to be one of the ones that's casualty from the goblin attack. Now my players either have to try to get that bowman, if he's still around, in a new shop if they want to have him continue to produce things, which could be a quest in and of itself, or they may actually have to conduct trade to be able to get goods for bows within the city. If you have a ranger in your group or somebody who uses ranged weapons, that could be something that they will want to have done. So for me, I think tracking this stuff is actually really good. To me, it's almost as important as tracking time. And there's an old 1st edition quote that talks about if you're not tracking time, you're doing Dungeons and Dragons wrong. I think if you're not tracking these numbers of people inside the city that the PCs regularly visit, and you don't progress the city without the PCs, you're doing it wrong because it doesn't make your city feel alive. Now, like I said, I put a lot of effort into naming things and all that so that the city does feel alive. And I've got this list here. I've got my inns named, and there's like there's the Dirt Bed Inn, which happens to be in the Dust Commons, which is one of the districts. And right here, you see that there's important sites in the city, which I kind of kept side by side so that it would be easy. Now I'm seeing a couple black flashes across my screen. If you guys are seeing that, I apologize. Hopefully it's not coming across on your end, but essentially, there goes one there. There's the Dust Commons, which is District 1, which is basically the one of the major districts within the city. There are 3 districts, and then there's the castle in the center of the city. And the Dust Commons, it talks about the different sites that are over here. One of the things that's important is this Miners Guild, and there are a couple things that are around the city that, like the Tunnel Rats Guild. The Tunnel Rats happen to be my Thieves Guild inside the city. That's not exactly common knowledge for your average player unless they happen to have like a background that would give them knowledge of like local thieves guilds and things like that. But this gives me a breakdown of the general populace and where their locations would be, so that if I have a player who goes, hey, I'm looking for a wooden table because we just bought a house and I want to set up a war room. Well, the manufactured goods are in the coin district. At least for the good quality manufactured goods. You could go over to like the raw materials market and the Dust Commons and build it yourself. So that allows the players to make some choices there that maybe are minor, but it does feel alive and realistic. The taverns I went ahead and named as well. I like a couple different online generators, and I'm trying to remember what the other one is, what the one that I used for a lot of these taverns. I think it was the Red Dragon Inn generator. If I remember it, I'll add it to the comments. But if you have trouble with names, there's tons of generators online. Just Google it, and you'll have a bunch of results. And then I've got some that are kind of fun here, like my weaponsmith. I have the Gross Owl Arms. And I had this idea in my brain that their sign was going to look like like a placard that had a set of owl bear arms sticking out. Like, you know, the joke that everybody has the right to bear arms. It's owl bear arms. Um, it was just kind of fun. And then there's the Gilded Goat, which is another weaponsmith place. And the way I thought about it is because this is the Dust Commons, you're going to get a lot of common goods and weapons here, whereas the Coin District one, that's going to be a little bit more of an upscale place. They're going to fit swords to you. They're going to be the ones that make masterwork weapons inside the city. Whereas the one in the Dust Commons, the Gross Howl Arms, are going to be kind of your run of the mill. Hey, do you need a sword? Go grab it out of that bucket of swords over there. That kind of deal. So I played with the idea of currency. I wanted to make this a mining town. It's got standard currency, but it also accepts iron trade bars. And because there is a confederacy, within the confederacy, your trade bars are guaranteed. So I have here that there's 2 pound bars and 5 pound bars. The 2 pounds are worth 10 gold. The 5 pounds are worth 25 gold within the Confederacy. And then outside of the Confederacy, it's iron by weight, which is a dramatic price drop. So the players, before they leave the Confederacy, if they're smart, are going to trade in their iron bars for actual standard money. Since I like having regionalized languages, I put local common here. I'm going to have at least like 2, maybe 3 local or common languages, if you will. And then I'm going to have a trade camp that goes throughout each of the cities. I've already made that decision. I want them to have a real world effect, like how it was back in the days of sailing. You would learn a little bit of the languages, the ports you were going to, but there was always kind of like a trade language. Dwarven also happens to be popular because the dwarves pretty much run the mines. From there, I talked about factions and organizations. There's Confederacy of the Brave States, which counts as a faction on its own. The Preservers of the Iron Bear is the knights inside the area, the Miners Guild, and the Tunnel Rats, which is our Thieves Guild. So I've got a little description here that just kind of basically blocks out what the town is, and it's a growing town on the fast track to becoming a city, especially with the influences of influx of refugees, which has led the king to basically bring on these people. He's referred to as the Iron Bear, and he has his knights, which are called the Preservers. And it kind of flavors the city so that when my players come in, I can give them this little description and they have this good idea of what's going on. And I've got these cool names like Preservers that are specific to the knights of this town. So if they ever go on an adventure and they've left the city behind and they decided, we're never coming back there, and it's just not a big deal, we're not going to go back to Ironthal, but they happen to come across a preserver who's way out of the city, or maybe they've never been to Ironthal but they meet a preserver. It can start kind of that conversation and get players possibly interested. So originally I named the city Valenford. I made this little coat of arms using some website. I think it's right here, mytribe101.com. If you want to check it out. Originally I named it Valenford. I like the placard, but I just didn't make a new crest for them. And I gave them a little slogan. I think the slogans are super cool because it really gives you a sentiment of the people, or at least what the king projects the people to believe, because he's the guy that comes up with the crest, of course. And it's strong in heart, strong in arm. And that gets me this idea that while they are a small military, their guards are going to be a little bit better, which is why I have elites, and I chose to have knights at that point. I also have a section for important NPCs that I lumped over here at the top. I've got my royal family in case they happen to come up. I've got deceased and their ages for some of them. I haven't aged everybody yet, and then I've got my knights. Since there's only 6 of them, I thought that it would be best to go ahead and name the knights and show you what families they come from, because they do require to be part of royal families. However, they can't be part of the Valenfort, which I decided to name the royal family instead of the town once I made that decision. So this is actually the Valenfort, like King Valenfort's crest here. So we've got the Hartberg family, which has 4 of the knights. We've got the Eincross family, which has 2 of the knights. And the kind of cool thing here is the family with the least amount of knights, actually their mayor comes from the Eincross family, Lord Mayor Armand Eincross. And then to kind of play with it, I also have these counselors here who are coming from the general populace. Kryda Iron Post is actually a dwarf. Gareth Bastel is a human. And then Bryn Wyndham is also a human. They're all on the council and they serve for the people, or at least that's the idea. They are assigned to each district. So one of them is the counselor for the Dust Commons, one for the Coin District, one for the Hearth District. Because there happens to be 3 of them, they decided to it was decided to split duties like that. So usually when you get a job from one of the counselors, it's going to depend on what district you're in. However, that doesn't mean that, let's say, you know, Gareth Bestel, who's part of the Coin District, doesn't decide to send you into the Dust Commons to do something that he doesn't want Bryn Wyndham to know about, who happens to be in control of the Dust Commons. Sorry about that, my mic just cut out. So basically, it will allow me to be able to set up kind of a little bit of espionage if players are interested in that. I also decided to add Dragonborn because I feel like there's a lot of campaign worlds where the Dragonborn are just generally banned. And so I have a Dragonborn house here. Their last name is Crow. And then if you check out the Dragonborn entry, they are named like Japanese traditional names are done. Last name first name second. So it's Crowthava, which is the female leader. They have a family that strictly deals in female leaders, and they happen to be a little bit more female orientated, and I thought that was kind of a cool aspect for their household because it's very different than the normally male dominated human and dwarven houses around them. I have Crow Rogar, who's the warden. He's basically their watchdog. He protects the leader of their clan, and he also kind of watches over the other members of the family. There's also the Tunnel Rats, like I mentioned, that they're kind of, I put them as an important NPC because the faction is based in the city, and I thought it was important to keep that in mind. And then again, I've got some important sites within the major city. And then basically what I did from there is I kind of took that stuff and I decided to seed it. So I've got some different pages here that I started to put together. So I've got one for the royal family, the noble families and everything, but you can kind of see that I'm basically seeding this out and allowing myself to add more to it as I go along. Here's the Tunnel Rats. Basically the Tunnel Rats, I gave them a little bit more stats and things like that. I was trying to use a set of rules for Pathfinder. I don't know if I'm going to keep it for these stats here. I did that to kind of test it and play with it. I don't think I like it all that much, but I have a bunch of stuff like their mottos, their beliefs and goals, who the important NPCs are inside there. And then you have Crow Beery, who happens to be part of the Crow family, and the Crow family wouldn't approve of, you know, Beery running around and doing all these things with the Tunnel Rats. So that's kind of a secret there. There's Thorn Frostbeard. The counselor Gareth Bestel happens to be part of that group, which is not going to be a common thing for players to know about, but it is something that is out there for me with the GM to play with and have fun with. And if you notice, he's not the highest level amongst them. He's not actually in charge of them. He's just kind of one of the boys, if you will. So, and then we've also got the important sites that are to them, where they normally operate, and the types of quests that they would normally send PCs on if the PCs were interested in working with them. And then again, I kind of broke it down to Preservers of the Iron Bear, the Confederacy of Brave States. And then this is where I had a little fun with it. Here's the Miners Guild. But basically, I've got it broken down into, like, here's the Council from the Counselors, which is an intrigue adventure. And I broke it down with who my villain is, what their actions are going to be. Again, this is very straight from 5th edition's book. And I rolled a lot of this. But if I didn't like my rolls, I double checked the charts and I picked out what I thought sounded best. So I have some fun stuff inside here. If you notice, I used Torn Frostbeard as an NPC for Copper Jaggles. A lot of the names that I have inside here, since this is not going to be a game world that I'm going to be using, I don't mind using their names because I think they're good names. Like I use one of the Iron Crosses for a player or for a character I'm running. But basically, yeah, I'm just laying out an adventure with the NPCs that are in here. And because I took the time to label and name and do all of that stuff inside my settlement page here, it flows super easy. The players have stuff to be able to go back to evolve, change, and adapt. If you're going to do a local game, this is super important for you to do. If you're going to do a game that's within a region, also super important. If your game is going to travel a whole bunch, this may not be as important. and I would actually recommend kind of a low prep kind of style going into it. That's pretty much what I had for this one. It went longer than I expected, so I do apologize about that. I really wanted to give you guys a thorough shake of what 5th edition talks about with how to build cities and how to actually implement them, and how I implement them normally. All right, guys, that's what I've got for you. Remember, there is the new website, dropdice.com. I just launched it a little while ago. I've been putting up some fantasy age content for a sci-fi setting called Providence, which is that space age thing that I was talking about before on the old blog, which I'm getting rid of. That's why there's no blogger icon on the Drop Dice emblem anymore. Instead, it's just going to be dropdice.com. So make sure you check that out. If you guys like it, want to use it, as always, share, comment, subscribe, provide feedback. Let me know how it goes and what you liked about it, what you didn't like. That way I can kind of improve the process, because ultimately what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out some little teasers and things like that. And then once I feel like I've got a good product going, I'm going to do an alpha test here on the channel where I'm going to play a game of Providence. And then once I've got it rolling and I feel like the rules are kind of comfortable and good, I'm probably going to put out a PDF. Just to kind of have my name out there on something. Speaking of PDFs, Tabletop Terrors, I work with them again on a new project which just launched, and it actually goes out to help out. Let me just pull it up real quick here. It's called Heirs of Desperation, and it's actually pretty cool now that I'm talking about a city game or a city development, because Heirs of Desperation is about how to put poverty in your campaign, and a lot of that directly reflects around things that would affect a city. So it's kind of cool that I happen to be doing cities today, and they put out that book. I think they did it yesterday, if I remember correctly. It might have been the following day, but definitely check that out. I did do some editing for them, so just know that you know, it's not an unbiased poke me sending you that direction. I think that these guys are doing a good job, which is why I continue to work with them. And I'll let you guys know if they put out a product that I worked on or somebody else did or anything. And all of the guys that are listed on there, they're great guys. Let me go ahead and pull that book real quick here, because I've got a copy. Now, the cool thing is the other bit about this Heirs of Desperation is just like Brigade Con coming up, this is actually going to be a fundraiser thing. It is for Hands of Freedom, and all the proceeds are going to go to it. So it was originally written by Tim and James from Tabletop Terrors, Nathan Lake, Michael Barger, Matt Click, and then we've got art by, I might say this name wrong, Gontis, who's actually been doing a lot of the Tabletop Terrors art. And if for no other reason that you throw like $1 or whatever you choose to throw towards the fundraiser here, the Dreadfather inside here is such a unique monster. It's super cool, and it's got a great picture. So if Gontis happens to be watching this channel and I haven't butchered your name, please know that I thought that the artwork you did on that was just phenomenal. I thought it really captured what the creature was. It was intriguing to look at, and it helped kind of fuel my curiosity for what it was, as just kind of a preview for you of what the book is about. So inside the section that talks about the Dreadfather, it's talking about how to use orphans in your campaign. Again, inside a city like the one that I was just showing you, Ironthal, I may have not expressly, you know, written up that there's an orphanage in there, but if I get a book like this that gets my brain going, maybe I'm going to go ahead and add an orphanage and explore it. And what the Dreadfather is, he's kind of like this protector, vengeful spirit for orphans. Super cool. And you know, you can have like different quests and things like that for helping out orphans in the area. They give you a role chart with each subcategory of like desperate problems that a city could have, from starvation to thirst to orphans. They even include an NPC with quite a bit of story inside there, so you can have a fully fleshed out NPC. Speaking of which, for World Building Part 13, we're actually going to talk about NPC relations and making your characters feel very realistic, because I think it's a good jumping point now that we talked about how to seed those NPCs inside your city. So definitely check that out when you get a chance. As always with this video, like, comment, share, subscribe. Let everybody know what you guys think. If you want to direct friends over to dropdice.com, feel free to do that. I put some effort into it. I think it looks great, and I'd love to see some feedback on any of the posts. A lot of the posts are carryover from the old blog, because I'm going to be shutting down the Blogger one here in about a week, just to get everything centralized on the new site. And as always, guys, I'm going to see you guys at the gaming table.